Well, hello et bonjour. I'm Paula Spivak, and it's just a pleasure to be with you all today. Permettez-moi de commencer en soulignant que le territoire sur lequel je vis et travaille est un territoire traditionnel non cédé des peuples d'Algonquin Anishinaabe. C'est avec un mélange d'angoisse et d'espoir que je me dis reconnaissant d'avoir l'occasion d'être présente sur ce territoire. And in addition to our land acknowledgement, we are committed to understanding how we can contribute to both truth and reconciliation by addressing our past with an open mind and an open heart to build a better future together. Je veux me présenter, Paula Spivak, présidente et chef de la direction de Bénévole Canada. J'ai le grand plaisir de vous souhaiter la bienvenue au lancement de la Semaine de l'Action bénévole. Bénévole Canada est particulièrement heureux de collaborer avec Emploi et Développement social Canada pour célébrer la Semaine de l'Action bénévole. We are thrilled to be collaborating with Employment and Social Development Canada to celebrate National Volunteer Week as we reflect on our past and get ready for our future. We have people here from the public, private, and nonprofit sector, including leaders from the Volunteer Centre Council, the Corporate Community Engagement Council, Volunteer Management Professionals of Canada, and our counterparts supporting voluntary action in provincial and territorial governments, federal departments, and other leadership organizations. I'd like to make a special recognition to the volunteers who serve on the board of Volunteer Canada and to the Volunteer Canada team who work year-round to make this special week happen. The National Volunteer Week theme for 2021, The Value of One, The Power of Many, celebrates the value of one person showing caring and compassion to another person and the power of many people, organizations, and sectors working together to create stronger and more connected communities. Au cours de la dernière année, nous avons vu de nombreuses personnes aider leurs familles, les amis, leurs voisins et même des étrangers. Des gens qui se sont levés contre le racisme systémique, des gens qui ont partagé leur opinion concernant les façons de créer une société plus juste et plus équitable. This past year, we have seen people supporting family, friends, neighbors, and strangers, and people standing up to systemic racism, and people sharing insights on how to create a more just and equitable society. This year, we celebrate all those who stepped up to volunteer, and we also celebrate all those who stepped back to keep themselves and others safe. If you have not already done so, please prepare and hold on to your short greetings, and I will call upon you later on in the program to submit those greetings into the chat. Please include your name, the name of your organization or department, and the community or jurisdiction in which you work. I would now like to call upon Greg Graves, Manager of the Horizontal Policy Unit of the Income Security and Social Development Branch of Employment and Social Development Canada, to say a few words. He will be followed by Jane Hennig, Chair of the Board of Volunteer Canada, who also serves as the Executive Director of the Voluntary Action Centre of Waterloo Region. Over to you, Greg.
Thanks, Paula, and thanks for the introduction. It's such a joy to be present today, and I just want to thank everyone here for participating. Your engagement in today's session is central to the success of the session. And as Paula said, I'm the manager of the Horizontal Policy Unit at Employment Social Development Canada. And my unit is responsible for volunteerism, philanthropy, and corporate social responsibility. And my unit has been working collaboratively with Paula and Volunteer Canada for over 10 years. And I don't know how the time slips by so quickly, but it does. And we have a very productive and rewarding relationship with Volunteer Canada. So to help celebrate this year's National Volunteer Week theme, The Value of One, The Power of Many, we've been collaborating with Volunteer Canada on this week on general. And I think really at the pinnacle, the most important is today's session. And that's basically, I just wanted to welcome everyone. I hope you have a wonderful meeting. And I'd like to turn it over the meeting to Jane Hennig now.
Over to you, Jane.
Yes, mute. Sorry about that, guys. Thanks, Greg. Volunteer Canada has enjoyed a long history of collaboration with the department, and we look forward to a continued and long future working together. It gives me great pleasure now to introduce Corinne Bagley to bring greetings on behalf of Employment and Social Development Canada. Corinne is currently the Director of the Social Policy Division in the Social Inclusion and Community Development Directorate at Employment and Social Development Canada. With 20 years of experience in the Canadian federal government, Corinne has provided policy advice and guidance in the areas of Indigenous social policy and programs, violence against Indigenous women and girls, Indigenous early childhood development, renewal of grant and contribution programs, the labor market agreements with provincial and territorial governments. Currently, Corinne is supporting the development of a social innovation and social finance strategy for Canada and the implementation of the investment readiness program to support the ability of social purpose organizations to access Canada's first social finance fund, set to launch in 2021. Welcome, Corinne.
Thank you very much, Jane. I'm assuming everybody can see me and hear me. It's so hard when it's just a little screen in the corner. It's all good?
All good.
Great, thank you. So yeah, it's such a pleasure to be here and to be part of this event to kick off National Volunteer Week. I say every year, all year it's important to volunteer and support volunteerism, and this week is always special, but I think this year in particular, as we are struggling to manage and eventually recover from the pandemic, the importance of volunteering is never more apparent during times like this. So I just want to wish you all a very, very happy National Volunteer Week. And it's just great to kind of be, to connect with people from coast to coast to coast to do this kickoff. So in government, we like statistics, and I think, these are telling. The latest general social survey on giving and volunteering and participating from Statistics Canada showed that over 12.7 million Canadians volunteered in charities, nonprofits, and community organizations. That's almost 1.6 billion hours of work, equivalent to almost 858,000 full-time year-round jobs. In addition to formal volunteering, Canadians also engaged in informal volunteering. In 2018, over 22.7 million people volunteered informally, devoting about 3.4 billion hours to their volunteer activities. So it's just staggering when you put numbers behind the good intent and actions of so many. And as I mentioned, especially during this pandemic, we've seen an outpouring of generosity of people supporting their communities, their families, their neighbors, vulnerable people in communities, picking up groceries, checking in on people, virtual mentoring, helping out in care homes, and now we're seeing volunteers step up in vaccination clinics. So this year's theme, The Value of One, the Power of Many, means that even the smallest act of kindness is invaluable, and that there is tremendous power in many people caring for one another. As mentioned, Employment and Social Development Canada, we're a natural partner and champion of volunteering in Canada. We have an amazing working relationship and partnership with Volunteer Canada, and we also work with nonprofit and charitable, organizations and their representative organizations to convene, to facilitate, to build capacity, and to support Canadians to volunteer. We have a number of grant and contribution programs that fund voluntary sector organizations to support volunteerism and community development and capacity building. We have the Social Development Partnerships Program, the New Horizons for Seniors Program. We have the Canada Service Corps, and then we also celebrate and recognize volunteers through Canada's Volunteer Awards. So this week as well, Greg mentioned that, we're kind of, partnering on a number of activities to celebrate National Volunteer Week. We also have a mandate within our group to recognize and encourage public servants to volunteer. Previous years, we would host a volunteer fair. We can't do that this year, so at the end of the week, we are going to celebrate National Volunteer Week and bring ESDC employees together to hear from and meet with a number of Ottawa-based volunteer organizations and to provide ideas and inspiration for the public service and public servants to get involved and volunteer. So I'm going to stop there. I think I'm turning it back over to you, Paula, and I wish you a very successful kickoff meeting.
Thank you, Corinne, and over to you, Jane.
Yes, thank you, Corinne. Your words have been inspiring, so we'd like to thank you for joining us today and bringing your greetings. We continue to value and appreciate the leadership of your department and the support that you bring to volunteering in Canada. So in 2021, we marked the anniversary of 3 significant milestones for the nonprofit and charitable sector in Canada. The International Year of Volunteers 2001, the launching of the first Canadian Code for Volunteer Involvement, and the signing of an accord between the Government of Canada and the voluntary nonprofit and charitable sector. 2021 is also a year to equip and position our sector for the next 20 years as we restore, regroup, rethink, and renovate our space and place in society as we all navigate the impact of the pandemic and take actions on racism, social injustice, and climate change. We also know that the world of volunteering and community engagement has changed dramatically over the past 20 years. And we have seen more intense and accelerated change in this past year. Informal volunteering, neighborhood groups, organic movements have all surged as people have helped extended family, friends, and neighbors with their basic needs, help people give a voice to social injustice, racism, and economic inequities, and seen businesses have finding innovative ways to co-deliver community programs with their nonprofit partners. In addition to the more than 12 million Canadians who volunteer through organizations, many, many more are volunteering in informal ways and with informal activities. People are raising funds to purchase accessible vehicles for their neighbors in need. People are raising awareness about climate change. And people are mobilizing to speak up against anti-Black racism, transphobia, and the history and current living conditions in many Indigenous communities. The Board of Directors at Volunteer Canada identified 5 key issue areas that we want to address over the next few years. The first, how do people engage? At Volunteer Canada, we continue to embrace, support, and recognize a broader definition of volunteering. Second, emergency response. We will support local volunteer centers to collaborate with municipal, regional, provincial, and territorial governments on mobilizing volunteers during emergencies. Skills building. We promote the link between skills and competencies demonstrated through volunteering and those required for paid employment. Fourth, diversity, equity, and inclusion. We will explore and encourage action on volunteering as a means to create a sense of belonging and build inclusive communities. And finally, social good. We commit to learn more and about how volunteering can contribute to addressing social good issues, including the Truth and Reconciliation Report and the Sustainable Development Goals. On behalf of the Board of Directors at Volunteer Canada, I wish you all a very happy National Volunteer Week.
Merci. Thank you, Jane. OK, dans quelques minutes, nous pourrons lire les salutations pan-canadiennes. Why don't we get ready now to see everybody's greetings. Even if you've sent a greeting before, please continue to send your greeting, again, listing your name, the organization or department that you work with, and the jurisdiction that you work in. So let's just start with the North and the West, starting with the Northern Territories and British Columbia. Send your greetings. And then followed by Alberta and Manitoba. So prepare your greetings and just put them in the chat so we can hear from you. I know some of you have introduced yourselves already, but please say hello, bring your National Volunteer Week greetings from your place, wherever you are, from your business, your department, your organization. So we'll start with the North, British Columbia, Alberta, Manitoba. Moving to Ontario. Beautiful. Moving to Quebec, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, Labrador, and PEI. So just keep your greetings coming and we'll just all enjoy hearing from all of you. And from those of you who are joining by phone and can't see the greetings, we're hearing from businesses and nonprofit organizations and government departments from all over the country, all acknowledging and recognizing volunteers and talking about the importance of voluntary action. Thank you so much and merci tout le monde. Bon, l'intérêt pour notre secteur et l'engagement des citoyennes a refait surface. En juin 2019, le comité sénatorial spécial sur le secteur de bénéficence a publié son rapport. In June 2019, the Special Senate Committee on the Charitable Sector released its report, Catalyst for Change, a roadmap to a stronger charitable sector. Among the 42 recommendations, there is a call to create a national voluntary action strategy. Australia, Ireland, and Nigeria, and many others, have developed national voluntary action strategies, and we will be learning from our counterparts around the world, as well as those in Canada, to develop a strategy for Canada that incorporates the value of inclusion, social justice, youth engagement, climate change, and the changing nature of volunteering. I'm thrilled to be introducing Nyakruka Stella Okonkwo, a seasoned leader in the nonprofit sector in Nigeria and a principal consultant for the Government of Nigeria's National Voluntary Action Strategy. Nyakruka is the CEO and founder of Fresh and Young Brains Development Initiative and Alexigen Consults based in Abuja, Nigeria. Nyakruka is the national consultant that led in the review of the National Policy on Inclusive Volunteerism for Nigeria and the development of the Plan of Action, which was recently approved by the Federal Executive Council for implementation. Over to you, Nyakruka. Welcome.
Thank you very much, everyone. I'm so sorry the network is a bit poor here, so you can't see my video. But I'm sure before we finish, I'll be able to show my face. Thank you so much, Paula, and I'm glad to be here with the Canadian team to, to give a brief background of what has happened with Nigeria and the next step. So what you see on the screen is an overview of the National Policy on Inclusive Volunteerism for Nigeria and its plan of action. I run an NGO called Fresh and Young Brains Development Initiative. It's based here in Abuja, Nigeria. I am a volunteer for life and I'm proud to be one. And so it's a privilege for me to share this presentation on behalf of my country, Nigeria. So we move to the next slide. Yeah, so this is a background on the agency of the government of Nigeria that is involved in coordinating the volunteer activities across Nigeria. It is called the Nigerian National Volunteer Service. It was set up by the federal government of Nigeria to complement all development efforts that are encouraging, harnessing, and managing and deploying anything to do with volunteerism in Nigeria. And they also had the mandate to work with the diaspora community to promote volunteerism. Yeah, so NMVS, as it's fondly called, coordinates all volunteer efforts in Nigeria. Next slide. So for the policy process in Nigeria, it actually started since December 2007, and gladly it ended 2020. It took us about 13 good years for Nigeria to have the volunteer policy. Yeah, so it started in December 2007 with a collaboration between the United Nations Volunteers and the NMVS. And later on, sometime in 2012, June, some organizations were involved. My organization, FBIN, we have the United Nations Volunteers, the Voluntary Service Overseas, ECOWAS Commission, under their EVP, the ECOWAS Volunteer Program, and Joint Initiative for Development. So we formed a national thematic group to review the policy. Yeah, and after that, nothing's really happened because NMVS didn't have autonomy, and at the moment still does not have autonomy. It's just a small department within the government. And so we kept on experiencing change in the leaders of the organization. We had the directors being changed almost every year, and sometimes twice in a year. So it really stalled the efforts being made. And again, change in government, and sometimes too we face issues of funding. And so at the end of December 2019, there was a talk between Voluntary Service Overseas and the NMVS to see what could happen. And I'm happy to say that the Voluntary Service Overseas, the VSO, supported the Nigerian government to undertake this. And so one of the first things they did was to issue a call for a consultant to undertake the project. And that was when I came in as a national consultant to review the existing policy and then develop the plan of action to ensure that it doesn't end up on the desk, but that is being implemented. And so what I did within it was that I developed the policy plan of action and shared it with the VSO, the UNV, and the members of the National Steering Committee. And then the inputs were made. And eventually, sometime February 2020, there was a validation workshop that took place where stakeholders from the multi-sectoral, we used a multi-sectoral approach to do this. We involved the various ministries, departments, and agencies of government because we believe that volunteerism is a cross-cutting issue. We also engage civil society organizations, the donor agencies, the private sector, the young people, and some other groups like the persons living with disability. And so it was validated, and I had to finalize the document and send back to the government. They followed their internal process to ensure that it was approved. Yeah, so up till December 2020, the policy was still being following the process within the government to get the approval. So what we did was to use the office of the secretary to the government of the federation to get the government to indicate and show political will. So during the IVD 2020, it was part of the things we put in his speech and that he presented. And so during the press conference that happened for the IVD on December 4th, he mentioned it, and it became a national interest. And so 4 days later, after the IVD, December 9th, it was approved by the Federal Executive Council. Yeah, so we can move on. Yeah, so at the moment, the policy has been printed, copies of the policy has been printed and being shared by the government. Is not yet out in the public domain. Yeah, but they are sharing it with the government institutions so that they can include it within their annual budgets to make it easy for implementation. Yeah, so in a nutshell, when I came on board last year to work on the review process and develop the action plan, I had to send out mails and then also had one-on-one interviews with key informants. And then there was also an online survey where different stakeholders were reached to make their input. And that is what I harvested and presented during the validation workshop in February and then later submitted. Next slide. Next slide. Thank you. Now, the key findings from the online consultations show that, number one, the most practiced form of volunteerism in Nigeria is voluntary action involving mutual aid, service, but the least one is donorship. Yeah, so it became very clear that for the policy, we needed to encourage that Nigeria adopts the various forms of volunteerism, and that is where the issue of inclusive volunteerism comes in. As at the time, the policy was still at the draft and review stage. It was just the national policy on volunteerism. But from the research I did, and also in line with the SDG principle of leaving no one behind, we decided that inclusive volunteerism is something we have to do. And I want to pause here to say that I believe that Nigeria is the very first across Africa to have a national policy on inclusive volunteerism. And that makes sure that all categories of individuals, institutions that are engaging on volunteerism are being carried along. Yeah, we can move on. There were some other issues that came up, the issue of stipends and whether we can substitute volunteerism for cheap labor. And we agreed that we cannot do that volunteers have to be treated with dignity, and they also have volunteer policies in place within organizations and communities to ensure that this works. Now, so I want to present the contents of the policy. It has three main sections. We have the preliminary pages where we have the foreword by the President of the country, Muhammad Buhari. We have the acknowledgement page. We have the executive summary, acronyms and abbreviations. Yeah, for you in Canada, you talk about volunteering. Here in Nigeria, we talk about volunteerism. So we needed to unpack the various terms involved in volunteerism. The policy itself has 8 parts, and part 9 is the action plan. We have to pull it together with the policy so that it makes it easier for people to understand the policy and know what actions to take. Yeah, so the policy is in place and is from 2020 to 2024. And the action plan has 7 strategic areas that it focuses on. Now, let me use the next 2 minutes to give you an insight of what you will see in the policy. So for part 1 that focuses on policy background and rationale, we have background on the national policy. We have a rationale for it, the state of volunteerism in Nigeria, as at the time, as that was as at 2020 January, the policy development and review process, volunteerism within the context of the SDGs, role of volunteerism in promoting community and national development. Now part 2 looks at policy context, the goal, the mission, the scope, the policy review. Part 3 is where we focus so much on the concept of volunteerism, what it means, what inclusive volunteerism means, what are the principles that guide us as volunteers in Nigeria, what are the benefits of volunteerism, and what thematic areas are being used to promote volunteer engagement, and the various forms of volunteerism that exists in Nigeria. And then we ended that part with the types of volunteers, whether as cadets or as groups. And then part 4 focuses on volunteer service and management. What are the conditions for volunteerism? Volunteers having their rights being protected, their responsibilities, the responsibilities of the VIOs, that is the volunteer involving organizations towards their volunteers. We looked at the issue of volunteer insurance because you are very familiar with the conflict situation, the security situation in Nigeria. And most times we see that young people that are being placed in some of these hotspot communities don't have their lives insured. So this is one of the highlights of the policy. And then we look at the institutional framework and policy implementation in terms of having a national thematic group on volunteerism, and then who does what and how will volunteers be supported, and then the issue of research and technology, how we can use volunteerism to promote that. Then part 7 looks at the volunteer management, implementation and enforcement, the coordination mechanisms, the principles of mutual accountability and peer review mechanism. Then part 8 focuses more on the institutional framework on how to, especially as regards strengthening NMVS. Yes, now we can move to the next slide, please. Okay, so this is in a nutshell what the policy looks like. We can move on. Yeah, so from what I have seen in terms of my experience working on the volunteer policy for Nigeria, I felt it would be good to share some ideas of what you can consider as a country when you are developing your volunteer strategy. So the first one would be to undertake a national survey. This can also be at the federal, provincial, territorial, municipal levels. To get a database of volunteers, you need to know who the volunteers are, what they are involved in, what are the challenges they face, what are the trends, what are the emerging issues they face, and then who are the organizations that are involved in volunteerism, whether at the private sector level or the public sector or the non-state actors level. Then from there, learning from experience of Nigeria, I am proposing that you look at the establishing national at the federal level, a provincial at the provincial level, the territorial municipal areas, thematic groups on volunteerism, on volunteering. That will also allow the public-private partnership approach to be used to ensure that various stakeholders have a platform where they can engage on. And here I'm recommending that Employment and Social Development Canada can chair that thematic group. Why Volunteer Canada? Because of what I've seen it has been doing, can serve as the secretariat or can be a co-chair. Yeah, so I also recommend that while you wait to have the federal volunteer strategy, it might be good to start at the provincial, territorial, or municipal areas. You can start with at that level. I spoke to Paula earlier on possibility of developing a template that the territories, the provinces, and the municipals can use. I am willing to work on that with Volunteer Canada. And then it will be important at an annual level. I know the UNV, the United Nations Volunteers, has what they call the National Survey of Volunteerism, on the state of volunteerism. So for Canada, for you to take stock of what has happened and how volunteerism is contributing to the national GDP, and also helping with school to work transitioning, helping migrants to settle in, it might be good to have a national survey at the annual level to undertake this. And then I'm happy to see that you have the Canadian Code. This is very important. If it's possible to translate it into the various languages, English and French, and any other language that both the migrants and other communities can also use to make it easy to sensitize people on the concept of volunteering in Canada and also to engage them. And then one thing I saw that is very unique is the Special Senate Committee's 2020 report on the charitable sector, the fact that they are all on board on this process to develop this strategy. I think is a big one, and they need to find a space within the steering committee to push this so that it can move from even being a strategy to you can have an act coming out of it. Then finally, I'm proposing looking at what is going on globally and also in Canada. There will be need to look at health as it affects the various categories, the Canadians themselves, the migrants and other people that are within the country. Look at the issue of environment. Climate change is very key. And look at issue of inclusion, especially as regards young people, women, migrants, orphans and vulnerable children, elderly migrants, and the rest of them. So those are the things I will recommend that you look at your level. We can move to the last slide. Yeah. So this year's 20th anniversary of the International Year of Volunteerism is very key to this process. So I will recommend that all activities around the IYV plus 20 can also be, you can have some elements of the strategy infused into them. And what can happen is that you have various stakeholders engagement. For the school-based engagement, you can look at how children can learn words using spelling bees competitions to promote volunteerism, engage in community service projects. For the private sector, have breakfast meetings or lunch meetings or B2B meetings where volunteerism becomes part of the conversation. For government, have dialogues and brainstorming workshops. For VIOs and civil society organizations, think of core theater presentations, storytelling and advocacy campaigns. And then media plays a key role in all this. So it will be good for an intensive awareness to be done using media. Now, every year, December 3rd is the International Day for Persons with Disability. So it might be good, since you are looking at issues of inclusion and diversity, to leverage that day to, to talk about the strategy and promote volunteerism. And then on the December 5th, there is the annual IVD, to use it to promote this. So these are my thoughts on this, and I'm happy to support you from here in Nigeria, and hopefully when I come to Canada early next year, to continue to support what I can do. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.
Wow, thank you, Nikruka. As you can see, we could probably spend a full day at least learning more about the process. And I think what strikes many of us is how similar some of the themes that we are dealing with here in Canada are to those that you shared in terms of your process and the specific issues in Nigeria. So thank you and merci. What we're going to do now is we're going to move into breakout rooms in a couple of minutes and consider some of the themes that you've heard about, both the things that Nikruka has shared in terms of the strategy for Nigeria, some of the themes that you heard that Jane spoke about in terms of issues here in Canada. And so the question is, what do we need to consider in creating a national voluntary action strategy for Canada? So we do have facilitators, and I just want to thank the breakout room facilitators from the Government of Alberta and from the region of Waterloo who are helping us in the breakout rooms. We also have some Volunteer Canada staff sprinkled throughout the rooms. So again, this is only the beginning of the conversation. I know that 25 minutes isn't a long time to consider such an important topic, but it really is to get the conversation started, because throughout the year we do intend to work collaboratively with our colleagues at Employment and Social Development Canada to convene more opportunities to have input and to connect with provinces, territories and municipalities and all sectors. So with that, I will just say that préparez-vous à partager votre opinion, ce qui a trait à la question suivante, de quel élément le Canada devrait-il tenir compte au moment d'élaborer une stratégie relative à l'action bénévole? So here we are going into our breakout rooms. Be patient for a couple of minutes while the magic happens. You'll be there for 25 minutes. Au début, vous pouvez faire les introductions. Just introduce yourself to one another and then get started on your conversation. And your facilitators will do their best to capture some of your thoughts so that when we come back, we could share with the broader group. All right, merci. Enjoy your breakout rooms. Thank you, everyone, and very special thank you to Nikruka for joining us. And as you could hear, she'll be here for the long run as we work towards this over the next year.